I've been using the Quantum Free Trainer, or the previous iteration, the Quantum Pro Trainer 2, over a year. I've been getting tons of questions coming in, especially after Home Gym Con, and I'm sure a lot more today because I know the pre-orders are back. I think he sold out his last round before, so pre-orders are back, I think, as of today, a little bit later in the afternoon. Shameless plug, my links are down below if you guys are curious, but the point of this video is I really want you guys to make the best informed decision, and I'm gonna give you first all the cons and the kind of the warning signs to kind of let you guys know if this machine is not right for you. You're gonna see here in a second, about ready to jump into a workout and kind of explain some of the little nuances if you were to use this as a standalone machine. Before I do get into this though, guys, there are a lot of people who are not subscribed to this channel that are viewers. Please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Greatly helps support me if you find these honest commentaries at all useful. All right, jumping in and just blitzing off a bunch of cons here. First thing is gonna be just the size and footprint. So when you first look at it, it can look kind of gargantuan, especially this big hunk of just solid metal. I actually don't think it is huge. You can check the footprint out in dimensions for yourself. I'll flash them here on the screen. Width-wise, I actually think it's kind of narrow, especially when you compare it to like an all-in-one trainer. I'm eyeballing back there. I think it's the arms that kind of reach out, and these are long and just kind of heavy just by default, especially now with these other loaders going laterally here. What I like to do is I'll usually take off an attachment, which that is something else if you don't like a bunch of attachments and pile of attachments. You might not like that. You might like something that's a little more simplistic, like I'll keep referring to, maybe a compact lever gym or something like that. But like I said, this is more versatile. Like I'll keep saying, I think it's more versatile, but still, that's just the point I'll make. So you can fold this out of the way if you guys want to. Sometimes I gotta be careful though. I put the garage door up and it'll catch and actually gets wedged with something if there's an attachment up there. But this is usually what I will do. I will kind of anchor the arms back there for kind of some storage if you don't want to kind of get in and out of your way. So I think that does work out. It is a heavy thing, and it's something that you got to have a lot of weights and a lot of weight plates, and not mind taking weights on and off, especially if you're going to do what I'm doing here in this workout. Because I'll say, and I've said many times, I'll primarily use this as a station, but there are times, as you guys will see throughout this, where I kind of work things into various sequences, and you can definitely get creative, but you got to have a lot of weights at your disposal to kind of set different arms up, and then of course take it down. So loading weights on and off, you could say, is definitely part of the workout, but if you do not like loading weights, you don't have a lot of weights, you don't want to buy a lot of weights, that will be an issue, of course, for getting a plate-loaded machine. Also have to like being flexible and or creative with your workouts. If you just jump into this, I could see if you just started grabbing the cables and started ripping it down, you might say this thing feels weird. You need things like length of chain or extensions. I also think swivels are a must, especially with this little notch up here. If you're using a carabiner, you can kind of get torqued. So some sort of swivel up here is gonna be necessary. I use a foot of length of chain is good. I usually have two of these, one up here and then one down here. That is going to be a must to fine tune various settings for length of lat pulls, tricep extensions, even bicep curls down here, of course, belt squats. So you got to fine tune a few things to find what works for you. And as long as I've had these, including the Quantum Trainer Pro 2, going over a year, I don't really remember where I kind of put stuff. And that even is something as basic as a simple chest press. I kind of know based on where some of the scuffing and marks are that I'm around 12 or 13 for doing a chest press, but it always takes you some fine tuning to kind of get that right angle that works for me. And that is more so the case when it gets to stuff like belt squats, when I start moving that thing down and finessing it, even using things like the barbell, that is easy to kind of use in kind of the one notch, but putting it into two can be a little cumbersome. So when you got committing to something like using a straight bar, it's not as easy as just kind of connecting it and adjusting it up here. They give you loaders, smaller loaders, but what oftentimes happens, if I got that thing locked in the wrong position, I got to take everything off, adjust these buffers, and fine tune that setting. So all that to say, if you don't mind spending some time and getting to learn the machine and the nuances and just fine tuning stuff, that might be an issue for you. And I do value that because my workouts pretty much are not the longest thing in the world, and I don't have a whole lot of time to be messing around with stuff. Some people love that stuff. That is not primarily me, but I actually have found it works out pretty well with this machine. One thing that I found is minor, and Glenn's not gonna like this. He's gonna say this is definitely a me problem and my own fault, and I firmly contend it could be my fault, but sometimes I've found that sometimes if it's not locked in enough, I gotta go back and retighten things. I feel like I have retightened it, but I've taken this thing on and off many, many times, especially other machines, that you really should not see any movement or sway in the machine. It should be totally locked in. It's just hard sometimes when there's a crevice down here, really to lock in, have no sway. You should have to lock down this portion and this portion. Everything should be tight, of course, but it's kind of hard to get a big screwdriver, or I'm sorry, a big wrench right inside of here to kind of brace that. So that is just something that You know, I try to make sure I tighten, but maybe it gets loose over time. But that's just very, very minor stuff. Otherwise, the only major limitations of this machine is going to be more so coming down to your personal preferences. It is very basic and primitive, which I like, but for some people, they're going to want more quality of life features. They don't want something that is really big and kind of bulky and heavy to kind of move off. It's not that heavy, but it's not as small and compact as some sort of other, you know, micro little mini gym that has like maybe one or two little functions. So that is something to be considered, but I also don't think you want this thing to be flimsy. You want something like this to be, you know, chunky and heavy to do all the things you can throw at it. So it's kind of the give and take overall. Those would be kind of the major things that I would tell people. And on that note, because I value this as primarily a traditional kind of bodybuilding type of machine, even though it's been argued to be kind of like a functional training machine with the landmine and all the stuff you can do with this, like cleans and even snatches, you certainly can do that. I value it for setting it up as if I'm setting up a bodybuilding machine in my gym with just one thing and not having a zillion machines lining my gym here. Some people are not gonna like that. They don't want to have to finagle and mess with stuff. They want their set stations and be able to do that. I think this is one of the trifectas of equipment that you can actually get in your home gym if you can afford it, and also with the space considerations. Machines are great, and I've said before many, many times, this is a Swiss Army knife of a machine. There's really nothing else like it. The only other exception I'd say to that, maybe the PowerTech or maybe the lever gyms that are out there. Made a lot of other comparison videos, which I can link down below, as well as the other quantum trainer related reviews down below as well if you guys are curious. And if you want the long and short of that argument, I will just say I think the quantum free trainer exceeds on versatility, build quality, commercial grade stuff, the number of accessories and stuff you can do to it, especially with the top lever arm. Although if you want something that's cheaper, a little bit more compact, and if you want a better use, I'd say, of a bottom and top pulley without the cumbersome nature of kind of taking things apart, then a PowerTech or lever gym is going to be right for you. And that leads me to the first and most commonly asked question I get asked very often from people. It's a good question. It's one that Glenn actually likes to pitch this machine as an all-in-one system. But people like to ask me, should I go ahead and pick up the Quantum Free Trainer as a standalone system? How does that feel? Compared to, say, should I go ahead and pick up a squat rack functional trainer, something of that regard, and or maybe some adjustable dumbbells. What I primarily tell people, especially if they start asking me, should they go ahead, and I just got this question, I think literally yesterday, the day before, should I get a all-in-one functional trainer, rack type setup, or something like this, just to address that question first off. Because again, that is something Glenn likes to kind of boast, that especially if you're someone who likes to train at home, a little more safety, you can do a lot of things, not to mention just the machine aspects of it. I would say that I would probably steer someone more towards an all-in-one functional trainer. There are, of course, a lot of caveats, and I've been a big critic of people of telling them, don't even bother picking up a squat rack related system if you can't and don't want to learn things such as how to do primary barbell movements safely. So if that is not you, then this system might be really well for you, or maybe something like a PowerTech or even an all-in-one type station type of machine as far as machine subs concerned. But I do think an all-in-one trainer is probably the best and safest spot to start out for most people, especially with a cable setup, because people are more or less familiar with that type of system. There's a lot of ways you can kind of open and add different accessories and attachments. Of course, there is things like a Smith machine. So I generally steer people to picking up and trying that first, or at least entertaining that idea first. There are still pros to this, one of being that you can break this thing down and set it up very quickly. So if you don't want to commit to an all-in-one functional trainer, it takes up a lot of space. Might be maybe roughly around the same price, even possibly a little more expensive than this. Then this could be a safer bet. You could probably offload this. It'll be easier if somehow it did not work out for you. And then secondarily, I would still recommend people pick up a pair of adjustable dumbbells. I just think they're still more flexible and fluid. I have found though, on my 3-car garage, I use this single stall as my primary gym space. Some of it overreaches into the other spaces, but I still feel like you can comfortably put in an all-in-one trainer over here. I get my adjustable dumbbells tucked in that nook over there. And then this can really be your all-in-one Swiss Army knife machine. This is primarily where I feel like this is the shining star of this equipment. It is not perfect in all exercises. In fact, I was gonna make an original video today, was gonna go through all the different exercises I like and dislike and kind of compare how it feels with things such as a hammer strength machine in the gym. Because I've said many times, that is what this thing is. It is essentially taking a lever-based mechanism of hammer strength machines, because if you're not using plate-loaded type things, or sorry, pin-loaded type things, you're probably using plate-loaded stuff in the gym, and that's primarily what this feels like, especially the fact you can adjust those back arms now, which I honestly don't do that often, but this was really one of the big game changers right here. This pivot point top lever arm for lat pull downs. I use it a lot for tricep extensions, and then as you'll see in this video, I've covered it before too. you can attach now their leg anchor and pulley, which I believe also now comes, I think, standard on all the new units that are being shipped out. So you'll see some things here in this video, which is one of the great things about this machine, is just the endless creativity of what you can do. So I just did a preacher curl for the first time on here with this Iron Master Super Bench. Shameless plug, this is down below too if you want to see it. But this was probably the best preacher curl I've done in a very long time. One of the best arm exercises I've done in a long time, and just randomly discovered it now, fine-tuning various positions. And that's why I wanted to show you some footage from this video, because you were seeing an organic use of primarily using this machine as a standalone unit. Now, personally, I find this thing works best, and I've said this before, in more so a station-based approach. Some days I do have a little more fun with it, and I will just kind of start chaining things together, and that's kind of what you're seeing here. There wasn't necessarily a rhyme or reason as to why I was doing certain things the way they were. I was kind of working around the confines of the machine, and of course, wanted to show you guys some things. But I like to do is set this thing up for maybe a chest, back exercise, maybe an arm exercise, and I'll kind of work around that, maybe alongside an all-in-one trainer, bands or adjustable dumbbells. And I did some of that here as well, because I do think some of those things still feel a little better. So I do like things like dumbbell flies. I can do an occasional dumbbell chest press you saw in this video. But the standout exercise that I've said this thing works really well on are going to be chest presses. Chest flies I'm kind of neutral on because I do feel like I'm more kind of tethered to the machine. Back pulls, this pulley setup with the arc of the machine feels excellent. Believe it or not, even putting the belt squat handle in here and even doing things like bicep curls with the arc and the chain feel excellent. Shoulders are great for overhead presses, doing Viking presses. I always said that if you've got a bad shoulder, this is going to be kind of a godsend. You're going to see me kind of kneeling on the ground. That's what I like to do for path of least resistance, but of course you could rig this and set it up doing presses on here as well. Rows feel excellent. Of course, now with the 3x3 1-inch holes, you can go ahead and attach various accessories. So instead of using my foot plate for the Anchor Pro, now I just attach it to the bottom of this base. That works out really good for things like bicep curls, just overhead presses, frontal raises. That's what I used to do. And then you can see in the back, I did anchor the Beyond Power Vultra behind there if I want to do things just on the fly with the starting extension point with the Vultra, so I can do things like seated rows. And I also want to touch on the leg department, because you guys might have noticed I haven't fulfilled any other leg devices and machines in here yet. And that is because there are a lot of leg days, the lower body days, where I am using this as a leg machine. So I'm using that red attachment back there. That feels great as far as the leg exercise. Been using the new squat harness version 4, which I still gotta do a whole review on that. There's a Shameless plug review for that. Awesome device, doing things like belt squats. Belt squat devices, like on a lever mechanism, are really popular nowadays. Especially, I think I reviewed one with Makola one that had like a kickstand way back when, a long time ago. But now you don't necessarily even need that. There's no reason for me to pick up any kind of thing like that. If you're into belt squats, you can do that here really adequately, especially the fact that now you can adjust this. I like to adjust this just a little bit lower for belt squats, but I even the other day attached it to the Anchor with some collar hooks just to kind of feel what it felt like with some added variable resistance. Even was using my squat harness too. And I will at some point go ahead and pick up a vertical press kind of flat plate, and I will try that on here too. I know Glenn's tried it and it can work out, especially if you're joining the two arms together. The other thing I really like about this, if say you have bad shoulder flexibility, say you don't like something like a safety squat bar, is that if you watch my technique here, I kind of go through the middle here, I sneak in the back, and then I can kind of post up my arms right up close of the these bar handles right there, and you don't have to put your hands all the way back, and it actually is a nice little deep squat that of course you can train to failure and not necessarily bottom out in. And then if you don't like this 360 swivel of the arms, you can go ahead and attach the straight bar either as a single thing, which is more or less what I like to do, or you can go ahead and attach them to both. But to go back to the lever gym argument, and I do want to kind of go devil's advocate both ways here, if someone had, and I've said this before, if you had the trifecta of adjustable dumbbells, all-in-one trainer here, a lever gym might be good in a space like this, being a little more compact. I just feel like you kind of waste the space of having the cables, because you might as well use the cable set up here or a lat pull down maybe on your all-in-one trainer than you would here. But there is a case maybe where you want the all-in-one trainer set up on your lever gym functional trainer, on your lever gym power tech, whatever. It could be right there, and that would be also ideal. I just think as a whole, this thing does a lot more, and you're getting more bang for your buck with this versus kind of double dipping in some of the cable mechanisms than you would if you had an all-in-one trainer versus a lever arm machine like a Power Tech. I am happy that people are finally coming around and realizing this is not just a simple lever arm machine. That's not how I look at it. And I will say this lat bar really was another saving grace of adding more versatility to that. But before, when people first saw this, like, it's lever arms, just pick up one of the new novel lever arms around the market now, which I think there is a case for that. But this is really, if you do not want to go ahead and attach lever arms on and off Of course, there's a swivel mechanism, but the fact that they are closer together, and not to mention all the other baked-in components and versatile mechanisms of this machine, I just feel like I'm more likely to use this than I would, say, lever arms. Now, I will make a comparison probably of that in the future. If you guys are curious, and I give you guys my honest take about it. End of the day, guys, this thing is very simple, but extremely versatile. If I was gonna tell anybody to get one machine that does a lot, this is gonna hands down be it. Would I use this as a standalone system? I personally would not. If I had to pick one thing, it would be maybe an all-in-one trainer squat rack, but for some people, this might be the exact thing they're looking for, especially if you're not gonna use things that are more barbell related or you don't need the necessary elements of a cable. I love the old school design about it. I love the fact that it's extremely simple in parts. I would wish, there's some little things like little minor things like, these move. I wish this didn't have this kind of little movement in the handles and bars. And not to keep repeating myself, guys, but I made a point the other day in a video when I went to a commercial gym. It reminded myself that when I used to go to gyms, it was only maybe a handful of machines I thought felt really well. This thing I can tell you does more than a handful of really good exercises. So as far as the footprint and what it does, I think as far as a standalone machine, nothing really beats it. If you do want to save yourself a footprint and kind of maximize and get some of these aspects of exercise that feel really good, you could definitely consider some sort of a versatile lever arm that goes on a squat rack. But then again, that's another kind of a chunkier piece, and some of those are almost half the price of this. So that's the other thing to just kind of consider. Try to be transparent about it as always, guys. I don't want you buying something you guys don't want. I'm sure Glenn does not want to have to deal with returns of that nature either. So any questions and comments you guys want to see, especially future videos and content, let me know. Again, the pre-order is up there. The discount code still saves you roughly $50. I'm not getting some crazy gigantic cutback, guys, but it is a machine I love. Had the privilege to actually use it for a period of time. And so I feel very fortunate that I got to really cover this thing firsthand and continue to discover new things on it. I will see you guys on the next one.